Hello, we are here for one more lesson of this SprutCAM training course, and today we are talking about operation setup in terms of turning. Turning as milling is another group of uh, toolpaths. As you understand the construction of the machine, the kinematics of the machine, it's completely different from a milling machine. So we have specific setups for defining the proper conditions to create a turning toolpath. I have an example. Some of the things, some of the parameters are the same, so not everything completely new, and others are specific. So again, we have one example. This is a turning machine. And to show you a little about what we have, so I will open one of the programs. Basically, we can follow this list, these items here on the left. And some of the main differences are, for example, on the tool. So on the tool, we have these options. You've seen them already for the milling operation. But a turning tool is completely different. And either for the type of inserts, so we have different things. In this particular case, not much available, but as you can see, we can have these inserts with a lot of shapes. Dimensions, for sure, you need to define them, no big deal. And then we have groups for internal work and external work, basically. We need to define the type of holder because there are a lot of different holders. And also it is crucial to define for which side we work, what we call here the hand, so right or left. This is crucial because otherwise you'll not have the result you expect. It depends on your machine. Regarding numbers, okay, it's pretty much the same. Regarding design, it is very important to define for which motions, which sides we can work with this tool in terms of turning. This is very important. We need to define also these fixing points, what is the overhang, and define some dimensions related with the overhang. We need to define the contact points also. We need to have them set, okay? In terms of the holder, okay, we can import also a CAD file as was in milling. And feeds and speeds, it's a little different because even that the parameters are the same basic concept, but it's a little different for turning. So in terms of the tool, this kind of stuff we need to define. Feeds and speeds, again, the concept, it is the same, even that the parameters itself are a little different because the behavior, the kinematics, it's completely different. But we have this graphic to define and to show you what each one of the parameters does and to proper define them here in this dialog box. Regarding cycles, we have specific parameters for each cycle, as you may understand. So the cycle itself, we have a couple of them. So direction, we can also define which is the direction of work. Steps, safe distances, we have them also in milling. The possibility to overlap and in turning, this is a very important parameter. Doing a finish pass, the same concept that we have in milling, but also different from what we do in milling. Stocks, the issue of the stocks in milling, we usually define a global stock for the whole part, even that in some of the milling toolpaths we have the same concept of both axial and radial stock, but I would say that in milling it's a global value. In here we have two values, and it's like that. So start points, compensations. In terms of the strategy, also the behavior for the tool and some of the things we can define. So rounding radius, in terms of turning, it's also a very important factor. Again, stocks. And some parameters for orientation of the tool, okay? Behavior for these chips and collisions with part and simulations. So also, I think, basically clear. In terms of links and lead-ins, lead-outs, so we can define also a couple of possibilities. Completely different from what we have in terms of these type of parameters compared with milling. So engage, retract, we can choose from all of these things, and choosing the mode or the type we want, we can define also some distances, and basically it's like that. So not so many parameters, even that is a little different because it's a very specific area. I think it's not very hard for a user to enter in this area. Okay, so I hope that these very brief notions of the setups possible to do, and we've seen all know in terms of roughing, because in finishing you probably have one or two things that are different, like for example engage, retract. You see that we have, for example, an angle which we did not have in roughing parameters. We can try to look a little around these other parameters. So for example, in strategy we have these back and front clearance angles, so very specific stuff for each of the parameters, each of the tool path types, but not so many things. So I think if you try to explore, to create a couple of things, it will not be very difficult to understand and to start creating toolpaths. A note also for this area here, because these concepts of the job assignment, the block, what we call the workpiece, and so on, they are also available. Okay, you can play with them. We should play with them also. So it's pretty much the same, even that in terms of the turning, the job assignment, we work with this profile, so we can choose particular areas, and this idea of choosing only specific place, it's more important than in terms of the milling, in my perspective. Okay, but the general concept, it is the same, so I think you'll get around this very easy. Anyway, questions, specific problems you may have, examples, we are here, we can help you. So in case of need, so contact us through the usual channels as usual. So let us know your feedback, and we will give you all the necessary support.